Oh, to be in England now that April's here. Better than Cincinnati. I'm out of there. Thanks, GM Phil Castellini, for making May and summer such a bummer. It ain't Browning, but these ain't the Reds of Bench, Rose, Morgan, and Perez either. Hi, everyone. This is Will O'Toole welcoming you to the 101st episode of Park Ridge Sports History, and a special shout out to the producer and mentor Howard Fredericks, who has really been, he's like the Mariano Rivera of these sports productions, because he comes in and always saves me big time in relief. Needless to say, I'm not apologizing for the way that one of my favorite teams is playing right now, and that is the Cincinnati Reds. So this is a special shout out, I guess, to my brother and all other Cincinnati Reds fans that are already looking forward to the 2023 season in Cincinnati and in baseball and beyond that, because this is such a disaster right now in the making for the Reds. I'm not saying that some of the deals that the Reds made over the winter won't come to fruition, but right now they are 3-18 as we begin the month of May. And I was doing some research, like I always do, using, of course, Baseball Reference. And what I discovered was the Reds pretty much, this is probably the worst April they've ever had, you could argue, in their history. With they've never had, well, I shouldn't say they've never had fewer than 3 wins. They did. Back in 1953, the Reds only won 2 games in the month of April. But here's the caveat. They only played 9 games, so they did finish 2-7 for the month of April. In 1936, they were 1-6. Now, they've had technically winless months, but that was when baseball started to begin the season back in the early 2000s in March. So they've had a couple of records where they were 0-1 and 0-1. But I'm not trying to be legalese here or like a Philadelphia lawyer, but really, this 18 of 21 losses, I mean, when you think about it, 20 games out of 106, that's 1/8 of your season. And right now, that would figure to be 24 wins on the year. Now, I know that the Reds are going to be better than that. It's just, as my brother Jim always says, it's just the law of averages. They're going to have a hot streak. I will tell you this. I was looking at the Reds' schedule. They've already pretty much completed the West Coast teams. And they did it in miserable style. I think they went total 0-10. Yeah, they are right now. They're 0-4 against the Dodgers, pardon me, and they are done their season series, I believe, with San Diego, 0-6. So as a Red fan who's trying to make a positive spin out of this travesty starting the season, if you take those 10 losses away, they're 3-8. Okay. Maybe that's just a bad start to a season. That's what you're hopefully rationally thinking, emotionally hoping as well. So I figured out that if the Reds were 3-8, or excuse me, 3-8, they might just win probably one of their lowest totals ever, about 56 games total this year. Now, I think they will be better. There's no hitting on the team. They're not getting any real substantial pitching. I know they've had a couple of close losses. In fact, I was just looking at Baseball Reference right now. They've already lost 3 games, all 3 games of one-run games. So even if you said, you know what, they'll even that out. Let's just say, they reverse fortune and stuff. Maybe by the end of May, they're 5 games under 500. And then you kind of piece the season together. But from what my brother tells me and from what I've seen just from the box scores, and I haven't really seen it, so I have to be honest with you I haven't seen the Reds play any particular amount of time. Highlights, of course, maybe a couple of zoom ins on Major League Baseball channel and all the rest of it, but they have not looked good. Joey Votto, probably a Hall of Fame player. He looks obviously old right now. And I think it's a combination. It is age and the fact that when you are playing on a miserable team, everything is just magnified, especially errors, mistakes at the bat, pop-ups in key situations, etc. So I'm hoping. And here's the other thing, too, Red fans should maybe have a glimmer of hope. You know, they've played 13 games on the road as opposed to 8 at home. So who knows? Maybe they can piece together maybe a winning record at home, 80 games. Maybe somehow they can be, let's say, 38 and 43 at home. And then, I don't know, maybe 25 wins. As a Red fan right now, I'm looking at a team, I'm hoping they get 60 wins. I mean, this is just out and out, just horrible. I was looking at previous Aprils for the Reds. Like I said, in 1913 and 1931, they had horrible starts. As I said, in 1936, they were 1-6. So that is technically the same. Well, it's not. It's a higher winning percentage. This is basically the lowest winning percentage they've ever had in the month of April. Do you realize how horrible that is? I mean, the Reds they go all the way back to the late 19th century. They were baseball's first professional team back in 1869. They did disband for a while, but they've been playing ball since the late 19th century, over 100 years. Over 100. You're talking about a team. Let me just tell you, I'm going to give you from Baseball Reference. Ready? The Reds go really 3 centuries, if you want to be technical about it. 3 centuries they go. And this is their worst start in everything. Wins, winning percentage, total games that they've ever had in the month of April. The Reds go all the way back to the American Association, 1882. So they were the first professional team, theoretically. They were known as the Red Stockings to 1889. Then they become the Cincinnati Reds in 1890 when they joined the NL. And they actually go, ready for this, 77-55 in their first year in the National League and finish 4th in the league. Pretty amazing. Now, here's the thing. They do have only 56 wins out of 138 games in 1891. Now, I've kind of adjusted the schedule, and I'm saying to you right now that if the Reds just play 375 ball, and that is having everything going, or them catching a break, they'll have 56 wins, which would be the fewest wins since, ready for this, 1934, when the Reds recorded 52 wins against 99 defeats. Really, when I'm starting to look, when I was going through this, I was kind of amazed at, and my brother is not going to be really surprised at this, but really, the number of years that the Reds had really successful teams. Here's a wild one as I was going through the Reds. So I'm saying this right now. Let me just get back to this as I just want to keep this one point. I'm looking at the Reds, maybe with a little luck, winning 61 games with this team as it's constructed right now. I really think they're only going to win 56. Now, we had the Tigers a few years ago win about 48, 49 games or something like that. We did have the Mets in 62 win 40 games. But this is really a team that it's really a shame because in the last couple of years, we were waiting for this team to make a breakthrough. And now it seems like they're just getting rid of all the players. And at first, you can understand why the general manager, Phil Castellini, probably acquiesced to some of these deals, because many of the players that they got rid of were past the age of what Bill James always talks about, age 27. So they're on the other side of their prime or best seasons. I get all that, but it looks like the players they got in return aren't going to really right now. And we could be wrong about this. And in fact, maybe I'm putting a reverse hex on the team saying that they're going to stink. And maybe all of a sudden they're just going to start winning. But as I said, it seems like they cashed in to get a little bit younger talent. But they're really not that good. Their hitting is abysmal. Their pitching has been mediocre at best. And here's the funny thing. There's nothing worse than being saddled with young talent that's not talented. Because two things. You have a tendency to say, all right, they're going to grow into their abilities, and they're going to, with more experience, they're going to mature and become a better team, better players, and all the rest of it. But here's the other side, and I think this is where the Reds, this is what's hurting them. They might have cashed in for younger players, but they're really not that good. And now, when do you decide to either jettison them or do something with them? Because if you start to say to yourself, oh boy, do we commit to these players and say they're just going to grow into their abilities, you might be making a huge mistake. All right. I don't see any of these players being in the Mike Trout realm. But then, of course, I know Mike Trout is a once-in-a-generation type of player. But I just don't see these guys. And I'm hoping, believe me, if they turn it around and they're in first place on July 4th, I will have the biggest shout out and say I'm the biggest dope in judging talent, especially of the Reds this year, of anybody who does these crazy little sports shows. But right now, I'm really disappointed because I always get into this discussion. I don't know what's worse. And I'm living it right now. Would you just rather have your team just flat out stink and not have to worry about it during the summer and look forward to something else and know that they're just going to stink and just say, all right, I'll just watch them a few times? Or is it more frustrating to have a team kind of like the Dodgers of the 50s? You know they're good. They're always on the precipice of winning, and then they don't win. I've gotten into this argument. I've said I'd rather have a team be really good that 1 year and win the whole thing and then be saddled with them being mediocre or terrible for the next 10. At least I got my championship. Rather than a team that's almost there, but is always playing the bridesmaid to a better team. And then what starts to happen is that becomes part of the psyche of the team, a ground ball that hits a pebble and bounces over your head in, the fifth game of a playoff. Or all of a sudden, the guy who was your Triple Crown leader the whole year, he winds up going into his worst slump of his life in these big, important games. I don't know what's more frustrating. At least I got that ring. Yeah, now I'm saddled with 10 crummy years rather than just being there and being eternally frustrated every October. I don't know what's worse. Anyway, getting back to the Reds, I was amazed at the number of really good seasons that the Reds had. Now, funny thing is, 1961, when they won their first pennant in over 20 years. So you have to go back to the Reds winning back-to-back pennants in 1939 and 1940. But from that point, the Reds won 80. Now, remember, you're playing 154 games. The Reds won over 85 games. 4 times in that whole sequence. 4 times. They were under 500 a number of years, and they were close to mediocre a number of others. Okay, so you can kind of see where I'm coming from. They win the pennant, 1939, lose, then win the pennant again, 1940, but at least they win the championship. Okay, they go 20 years. They do have some spots where they win 85, 86 games, even 91. And I think that was the first year of Frank Robinson. It is. Frank Robinson is on that 56 team. And so you can see that they are starting to turn the corner because in a few years later, they're winning the pennant with 93 wins. I didn't realize this until I was doing the research. To realize that the Reds won the pennant in 1961, lost to the Yankees, and were 93 and 61, played .604 ball. I didn't realize this. In 62, they actually won 5 more games, had a higher winning percentage by 1 point, and yet, ready for this, finished 3rd in the division. Now, there's 2 things here. Baseball expanded in the National League in 62, so there were 8 more games played, but even with those 8 more games, the Reds, you could theoretically say, won 5 of the 8, played 625 baseball. Actually, they do. To win, they nearly won 100 games and still finished 3rd in the division in 62 behind the Giants and then the Dodgers. Pretty remarkable season by them, okay? And, of course, Frank Robinson led them in everything in all those years. And probably then they won in 63, 86, but then they come up in 64 and they win 92 games. And they finished 2nd. All right? They finished 2nd to the Redbirds, the St. Louis Cardinals. And that's a team, I tell you, outside the Dodgers, it's a team that has just owned the Reds over the last, I would say, 10, 12 years. And it's funny thing is, never realized this, that Cincinnati and St. Louis have had a huge rivalry going all the way back. And in probably it predates even the 60s. Probably goes back further than that. The Reds, though, back in the 60s, had a huge brawl with the Redbirds. And it did involve, I believe, like Bob Gibson, Hall of Famer, Tony Perez, Hall of Famer, Lee May, really good player, and all the rest of it. And then the reason why I started investigating that was that, a few years ago, probably late 90s, early 2000s, maybe I even stretched it to 2010, the Reds and the Cardinals got into a huge beanball battle as well. And I'm not making light, it's a serious thing, but it's also part of the fabric of baseball, beanballs and, these bench clearing brawls and all the rest of it. I think sometimes the players and the managers push it to just kind of like clear the air in their own locker room. And it kind of brings the teams back together again as a unit because it is a long season. And people don't realize that you do not begin the season with the same 24, 25, maybe even 27 guys that are in that locker room in April as are in it in September. And in fact, if you take a look at many of the teams, they go through 40, maybe even 50 players during the season. So that's basically half, it's double your original roster. So there is going to be difficulties. There's going to be challenges in the locker room. And that's why I kind of laugh. Not at the serious beanballs. They can be, and listen, they can be career threatening. They can be life threatening. I'm talking about those, the bench clearing brawls with the ball that hits the guy right in the knee or in the calf, someplace that is not that bad. And everybody clears out. It's kind of crazy. Anyway, the Reds, all right, they won. They finished 2nd in 1964. They win 89 games in 1965. And without a doubt, in 66, they go under 500. And I do believe that the worst trade in their history, the Cincinnati Reds history, occurred that winter when they got rid of Frank Robinson and were hoping in return to get a really good pitcher in Mil Pappas. And I've talked about Pappas before on Sports History, Park Ridge Sports History, saying that he was a pretty good pitcher, came within one pitch of a perfect game. When he was with the Reds, I think he had a bad arm and never really fulfilled what the Reds were hoping for. What I did read, though, at one time the Reds wanted actually Jim Palmer, who had in 66, remember, he does get hurt. He had arm troubles early in his career. But can you imagine, and I've said this before, can you imagine the Reds, the Great Red Machine, with Jim Palmer as their number one pitcher on the mound? Who knows what would have happened? As I always tell my brother Jim, though, had the Reds won in 1970, they probably wouldn't have been the Great Red Machine because they probably would never have made the deal for Joe Morgan. Maybe, but I doubt it because I think what happened in that winter of in the winter of 71 after they finished miserably, 79 and 83. They knew they had to get pitching, and they knew they had to somehow make their offense, they had to fine-tune it. They had the lumber. Now they needed the lightning, and they got that in a player who could do everything. Field, hit, run the bases, hit for average, and that was Joe Morgan, Hall of Famer. And he was really the final piece for that Cincinnati Red team. Anyway, I'm looking at the Reds. They've won, in 1990, for instance. I just want to give you just some ideas here. I'm looking for hope, Reds fans. In 70, you're not going to get much hope from me. They raced off to a 16-6 mark. But in 75, they were 12-11 in April. And that was the year that the franchise won. They won the most games in franchise history with 108. So when you think about it, they go 12-11. They really won 96 games after that and only 43 losses. Way over a 667 average, probably about 675 if I'm correct. And of course in 76, I didn't do 76. Well, I did. I just didn't list it here. In 82, all right, when they went 61-101 and they actually finished in last place, they were 8-12 in April. So it doesn't bode well. I'll tell you this. In 1995, they go 0-5 in April. But this is coming off the baseball, the strike when baseball shut down at the end of 94, August of 94. They started off 8-5, but the Reds finished that year 85-59. And probably their best season that they've had in a long time ended with the Reds under 500, and that was 2006 when Jerry Narron was their manager. They started off at 17-8, playing 680 baseball, but they would only finish 80-82. Basically, what they did was they went 63-74 the rest of the way. So maybe there's hope. I'm just looking at some of the years under Dusty Baker. The following 6 years later, they started off mediocre 11-11. And they won 97 games. 2015, they were an 11-11 team, but they finished 64-98. So it's kind of a hit or miss. I am looking at this. I think, though, they will play better. What's resonating with many fans and really psychological is probably going to hurt the team as the year goes by. And even though the general manager did apologize for his remarks to the fans who are upset, and justifiably so, because this is a team ready for this. He told fans that they had no choice. This is Phil Castellini. They had no choice other than to accept the team's pared down roster, then apologized hours later. Okay, he probably wasn't really thinking. He's probably frustrated. Look, he's frustrated like the rest. General managers don't want to destroy the team. They're looking to make moves to obviously improve the team. The Reds, though, have made the playoffs only 4 times in 15 years, which, when you think about it, to defend the Reds organization, that's a heck of a lot better than going 20 years from 1940 to 61, and then another basically 9 years from 61 to 70 without getting a whiff of postseason. Basically, that's 3 years that you went to the postseason in the last 30. Now, obviously, there's more teams, there's more playoff possibilities, etc. So, I get it. 4 times in 15 years, I think most teams would settle. If you can make the playoffs maybe 2/3 of the time, I think that the fan base is pretty happy with that, knowing that sometimes you got to build up, then break it down, and then rebuild, especially the small market teams who aren't going to afford or pay for the top talent. Anyway, the Reds, really, they got to the wild card round 2010, 2012, 2013, and 2020. And in fact, what really sits badly with the 2020 is that they didn't score a run in the postseason, losing to the Braves. But where are you going to go? Let's start there. Sell the team. To who? Really should have said to whom, but we'll talk about grammar another day. That's the other thing. You want to have this debate. If you want to look at what would you do with this team to have it more profitable, make more money, compete more in the current economic system that this game exists, it would be to pick up and move somewhere else. But where are you going to move? That's number one. And so be careful what you ask for. I think we're doing the best with what we can with the resources that we have. We're no more pleased with the results than the fans. And I think to give Castellini the benefit of the doubt, I think it's frustration coming out on him. Everybody has plans for their team. Think about all you fantasy baseball fans and you fantasy football plans. You think you know everything. I'm one of them. And then you go out and you plan your team, you plot it out, you find out everybody just stinks that year and there's nothing you can do. Obviously, you're going to be frustrated because you think you want to know more than the next guy. Same thing with general managers. You're evaluating talent, which is the most subjective thing, and then trying to project what it's going to do from year to year. Right? And everyone tries to, I think, live by Branch Rickey's probably two famous adages, quotes, maybe advices, that luck is the residue of design, that through the hard work, things breaking your way will result and they'll be icing on the cake. But, you got to do the work and the research before then. And, trade a player a year too soon rather than a year too late. I think probably that was in the mind of Castellini when he did make these moves. And arguably, there were a couple of guys that he did get rid of. Suarez is one of them, I believe. Oh, wait a minute. Who was their third baseman, but really had some great, I just want to see if I'm pronouncing it right. I'm going to just call him Eugenio Suarez. Yes, it was Suarez. I mean, here's a guy, he had 31 home runs last year, 79 RBIs, but he hit only 198. And his on-base percentage was an abysmal 286. Now, this was a guy, age 29, that the GM got rid of. He's with Seattle right now. He's hitting 230. The argument would be by the general manager, is he really doing that much better? He's got 3 homers and 11 RBIs in 20 games. But here's the problem. This is what everyone sees. Suarez, probably in his 3 best years, 25, 26, and 27, the Bill James years, had 26 and 82, 34 and 104 RBIs. And then his bust-out year, age 27, he was 49 and 103. But then in 2020, with the COVID and all the rest of it, in 57 games that year, he hit 15 homers and 38 RBIs. Now, you can project and say, hey, if he had played 150 games, he probably would have had 45 and probably 90, 24, 114 RBIs. And then last year, 31 and 79. The problem with that 2019 team, he led the league in strikeouts with 189. So maybe those were the flares that were being shot up that the general manager was saying, hey, I'll give this guy another 2 years. And then if he doesn't cut down on his strikeouts, and of course his walks went down. They went up, then they have gone down over the last 2 years. And right now, I would say that walks, he's thrown 11 walks in 20 games. He plays eight more times. Maybe he writes that and brings it up to 88. Right now, though, you'd have to say 230 batting average, 3 homers and 11 RBIs. Not bad first 20 games. But again, is that what maybe Seattle was looking at? And as I said, maybe you're getting rid of the man maybe a year too soon, but you also realize that maybe he is past his prime. That's in his defense. But in the defense of Red fans, when you lose 18 of your first 21 and you're already double digits behind in games in the National League Central, it doesn't bode well for the summer. And it looks like they're going to be really grasping for straws right now to find an all-star on the team. So these are the Reds, unfortunately, of 2022. Hopefully, they will right the ship. And they'll be treading water a little bit less during the summer. But my prediction, I think they got maybe 56, maybe if if somehow they write it a little bit, maybe they get 66 wins. I will tell you this. If they improve and get 66 wins, I might just be happy and say, all right, let's build on this. So I know that sounds kind of crazy. 66 wins, you're still losing almost 90 games. Actually, you are. You're 66 and 96. But, if they can win 70 games, that's not bad, because then you're talking about a team that goes 67 and let's say 92, 22, 67 and 74 the rest of the way. That's not too bad from where you began. So here's hoping they do that. Anyway, the lowest win totals, here's the thing, is 1901. They were 52 and 81. However, in 1882, they only won 55 games. The good news for the Reds of 1882 was that they were actually 30 games over 500. They went 55 and 25 that year, which would have projected to about 110 wins, which probably would have put them close to or over the all-time winning record in Reds franchise history. I'm just fortunate enough that I lived to see probably the greatest Red team in their history, and that was the 75 team of Rose, Morgan, Bench, and Perez, as they won 108 games regular season, then another 7 in the postseason. Pretty remarkable. And I was alive for 3 World Series championship teams. Not bad. And 2 other National League pennant winning teams. 5, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. All right. I would like to use maybe the rest of the show. And this is something I've been wanting to do. Rather than get pictures off the website of baseball cards, actually show you some real ones. And I'm hoping, this is Steve Sachs. I'm going to talk about him if I can get to all these players. Ruben Sierra. And I did pre-pick these. And the only reason I did pre-pick them was for a number of reasons. One is, here's the Hall of Famer Robin Yount. I'd like to talk a little bit about it. Lee Mazzilli. I am sure he is one of the many. Here's a guy who played for both the Yankees and the Mets. He's probably a fan favorite of both. You can't go wrong with Lee Mazzilli, Brooklyn-born, MVP. Should have been. Wait a minute. Let me take that back. He should have really been the MVP of the 79 All-Star game. I know it went to Parker primarily for the throw at home plate to Gary Carter, but Mazzilli had a walk and a home run in this game to help the National League come from behind and win in Seattle. And then here's Omar Vizcaíno, shortstop, who's a cusp Hall of Famer. And maybe I'll spend a little bit more time with him towards the end of the show. But what I wanted to do was, I did pre-pick these. What happened was my son got a slew of cards from a friend of ours. And so I was going through them. I think there was 90 in all, and he was just emptying it out. Some are probably worth something, not like a Hannes Wagner or anything like that, but maybe $5, $10, because what happened was many of these cards are from over 30 years ago in some instances, but you got to remember that many of the card companies, they really did flood the market with cards, so the value of them are a little bit down. They are in pretty, I know a real collector would find some problems with this one, but I have all the corners, slight phrase and all the rest of it. That would ruin the card's value. The one I do have here of Omar Vizcaíno, it is in plastic, so you can see it's pretty much mint condition. I'm sure that anybody who's about to give me any kind of money for this would really be discriminating about it. But anyway, I just want to just take a look at some of these guys and just talk about their careers. First of all, here's Robin Yount. And the reason why I want to bring him up is, he never played in the minor leagues. That was his big thing. I do remember when he came up. I can't believe that he has a 77.4 WAR in his career. He's got 251 home runs lifetime, 285 batting average, 271 steals, an on-base percentage of .342. He won the Gold Glove once, But he did win 2 MVPs, one at short and one in center field. Now, do I think Robin Yount was a good player? Yeah, I really do think he was a solid player. His best season, of course, age 26, when he led the Brewers to the pennant in 82, and then they lost. I'm going to keep this up so you guys can see this. All right. Great picture of him, by the way. Love those pinstripe uniforms. You can get rid of that blue band. It's very softball looking. Love the stirrups. All right. That was the look back in the 80s and 90s. Robin Yount, though, did have a great season in 1982. 46 doubles, 12 triples, 29 home runs, 114 RBIs. He had 54 walks, a .331 batting average. He actually led the league in slugging with 578 and in total bases with 367. I mean, that's an unbelievable season from a shortstop. And then in 89, I do believe, he's the MVP with 21, 103, 318 as he shifted to the outfield. And he won the MVP. Now, here's my only problem. And it goes back with the WAR. When he won the MVP in 1990, his WAR was 5.8. But a pitcher by the name of Brett Saberhagen had a WAR of 9.7 off a 23-6 record with a 2.16 ERA. All right, so Yount shifts to the outfield. But as far as outfielders are concerned, Ruben Sierra, who I just was highlighting, so this is a good segue. Here's Ruben. He had a 5.9. Now, in all honesty, Sierra had 119 RBIs to lead the league with 29 home runs. He had a .306 batting average. But I'm going to look this up just so I know I'm talking through my hat anyway. I just want to look at something that I'm learning a little bit more with the WAR. But in 1989, his defense measured a 0. Now, what they talk about, it's total fielding runs above average. Okay? Now, he's bested Yount in home runs by 8, in RBIs by 16, but not in batting average and not in on-base percentage. Now, here is Yount as an outfielder in 1989. His defense in 89 in the outfield was a -14 playing center field. Okay? -14. So I don't know, and for the life of me, I'm still confused. And I'm sure, to be honest, I can say this and everybody can think I'm a dope. I don't really care. But I'm still confused with WAR, because if he had such a terrible WAR as compared to Sierra, don't you think Sierra would be a little bit higher than 5.9 to 5.8? Wouldn't it be, let's say, in the realm of 6.1, 6.2 compared to Robin Yount? Now, I just want to say this. Here's Ripken, who was the highest of all three. He had a 6.7 WAR that year. He had 21.93, but only a 257 batting average, although he had a 329 on-base percentage, still lower. Now, his defense, though, in 1989 was, ready for this, was 21. Like, let's say a 21, it kind of flattened out to like a 17. I'm still learning a little bit about that. My whole point is this. There, it seems like his defense played a huge role in him finishing far ahead by almost a point ahead of Yount. All right. And I don't know, 0.8 higher than Sierra. Yet Sierra had by far 22 more 22. He had 26 more RBIs and hit 40 points higher. And here's the thing. If you want to throw out batting average, he still was 30 points higher than Ripken in on-base percentage. And Robin Yount was 60 points higher than Ripken. So I don't know. It seems to me that sometimes the war is important on defense and sometimes it's not. It seems that war seems to give more emphasis to offense and sometimes it does not. So I'd like to explore that a little bit more next week or on the next show, because there are other players, notably Omar Vizcael, all right, probably known more for his defense, although he was a very good hitter. And yet, nobody's considering him for the Hall of Fame. Anyway, as always, I hope I didn't confuse you too much with the war. It is something of interest, something I'm still trying to figure out, like I'm sure most fans are. So we'll have some more fun with that. But this week's edition, and again, thanks to Howard for giving me now a new start on my next 100 episodes, hopefully, for Park Ridge Sports History. This is Will O'Toole. Thanks, everyone, for following. Bye now.